Hi, this is Rick Brandenburg for Turf Bugs and Rock and Roll, North Carolina State University. A lot of the questions that I get from superintendents and sod producers and sports turf managers and lawn care operators, etc., have to do with identification of caterpillars or worms that they see in turf grass. And proper identification really is important because there are some worms you'll find out there that really, no matter how abundant they are, the amount of damage they can do is pretty limited. There are other ones out there that you need to really be concerned about because they can do a lot of damage. And there are also some species such as fall armyworms that are a little bit more difficult to control than some of the others, and it really can influence the product that you select. And oftentimes we give these general descriptions. Well, an armyworm or a fall armyworm has these distinct stripes that run down the side that make it different from, say, a cutworm. And while that may be true to the untrained eye or to someone who simply isn't an entomologist, those differences are not nearly as easy to detect or to see. We also will talk about distinguishing characteristics. For example, on fall armyworms, we'll say there's an inverted Y on the head. Well, if you really know what you're looking for, you may be able to pick one of these up and hold it in your hand, and you may indeed be able to see that characteristic. But unless you're really familiar with it, you probably are not. And one of the little tools that I recommend, you can look online at a lot of biological supply stores, and are these real small hand lenses. They're not cheap, but they're very well made, and you can carry them around in your pocket or keep them in your cart or whatever. And they're usually about 10x, 10 power, and they really help you see these characteristics so you can make a good definition. They can help, or diagnosis. They can be useful with weed identification, with diseases, all those sorts of things. So it's really a handy tool to have. Most people don't know exactly how to use it. They use it sort of like a magnifying glass and hold it close to the object while they're looking through it. With these particular lenses, you hold it very close to your eye. You close your one eye, hold it close, and then you bring the object you're looking at closer until it's in focus. So the key is you hold the lens near your eye, and you bring the object closer, and then you should be able to see with pretty remarkable detail whatever it is you're looking at, and that can really help you make a good identification. Now, one thing I really want you to keep in mind is that there are a lot of good reference books. You can go on the web and you can look up photographs, and you can find really good pictures of some of these distinguishing characteristics to separate out these different species. But what I want you to keep in mind is that out there in the real world, in nature, there's a lot of variability in how these insects look, and some of that can be based on the region you're looking at. Some of it can be based on what it is they're feeding on. They can take on a little different coloration. So if you say, well, it's always black or it's always brown, there can be a lot of variation in how a particular insect looks at a time of year or in a particular location. And I'll give you an example of that with fall armyworm, black cutworm. What we've got here are two caterpillars. The one on the bottom is a black cutworm. The one on the top is a fall armyworm. And if you just look at the coloration of them, you can see that they're very similar with these two specimens. And if you're just simply looking for stripes or whatever, you might think the cutworm on the bottom has more stripes, and maybe it's the fall armyworm. But the bottom line, and the only reason for showing you this little video, is that they can look very similar, even though they're two very distinct species, actually quite different in their biology and ecology and control methods. So having a hand lens, having a good reference source that has good distinguishing photos that shows you what to look for, really are very important. So the bottom line is, make sure you do a proper identification before you make a selection. As I mentioned, fall armyworms are a little more difficult to kill, so making sure that is indeed what you have can influence your insecticide choice, and it can make sure you get a little bit better control, or make sure you don't waste money on a special product to get an insect that turns out to be not the one you think it is. So get a hand lens, have a dissecting scope, have something that you can really get a good image of these pests to make sure you identify them properly. Make sure you've got a good reference book, or you know where to find these photographs on the internet. Hope that helps a little bit. Look forward to talking with you later. Thanks.